Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the steps to solve any inequality. So you are going to follow basically the same steps that you would do for equations, but the only two additions would be if you multiply or divide each side of the inequality by a negative number, you have to flip your inequality sign. Also, you have to graph your answer on a number line. So first thing is if there are any parentheses, this is singular, there's a plural, I like to use the singular version. Distribute the term on the outside to every term on the inside. So only, if you see parentheses, only distribute that term being multiplied to the parentheses to all the items inside the parentheses. The second thing you want to do is combine like terms on each side of the inequality. Now, it's important that the first two steps, those two steps you're not doing to both sides, you're doing them on each side that you see them respectively. So that's why it's very helpful to draw a line through the inequality sign. So you separate your two sides, and when you combine like terms on the left side, let's say, you keep them on the left side. If you combine like terms on the right side, there's not a lot of space there, but if you combine like terms on the right side, you keep it on the right side. Step 3, if the variable appears on both sides, or each side, however you want to say it, of the inequality, use addition or subtraction to get your variable terms on the same side so you can combine them. So if you have variable terms on opposite sides of the inequality, you want to move one of them by adding or subtracting, doing the inverse operation, so that you get them on the same side and that you're able to combine them. To be honest, with inequalities or any equations, I usually see the most mistakes, if students do make mistakes, in the first three steps. So be careful with these first three steps, especially the first two steps. The first step, most students do okay with. A lot of times I'll see mistakes with combining like terms. So when you combine like terms, you want to make sure you just simply add the terms that are like and then write your answer on that side. Bring the remaining terms down. Okay? Step 4, now that you get your variable terms on the same side, you want to isolate the term that has your variable in it using addition or subtraction. So I like to put a box around it usually, so it could be either something being multiplied together or maybe a fraction, right? Eliminate the coefficient in front of the variable by using division or multiplication. So this is basically gets the variable by itself totally. Now at this step, it's so important that you remember, if you multiply or divide both sides of your inequality by a negative number, you must flip your inequality sign. That's so important because you're actually changing the meaning of which side is greater when you multiply or divide each side by a negative number. You're still keeping it balanced, but what side's greater actually changes. Okay? And it's so important that you remember how to do this step when you're solving inequalities. All right? And then lastly, even though it wasn't on there, don't forget to graph your answer on a number line. I always recommend that you put the variable first. So for example, if you have something like 3 is less than x, and even though this is an easy example, good idea to rewrite that as x is greater than 3. I hardly see mistakes when students graph that version. I sometimes see mistakes when students graph this version. So if your variable is to the right of your inequality when you solve for it or you get your final answer, I would highly suggest you rewrite it so you put the variable on the left-hand side. Remember, these two mean exactly the same thing, and before you graph it. Okay? So let me clear this off a little bit. So let's look at two examples. So we'll start off easier here. So we have 3x plus 6, we're right up here, is less than or equal to negative 5 times the quantity x plus 2. So it's always a good idea to draw a line through your inequality sign. That separates your two sides because the first two steps you do on each side respectively. So since we have parentheses, we're going to distribute that negative 5 to the every term, I should say, inside the parentheses, and we get negative 5x minus 10. The second thing you want to check for is like terms, but for this problem, there's no like terms on each side. So these two aren't like terms, and then these two aren't like terms. So therefore, now we want to get our variables on the same side. So my variable terms. So we have this negative 5x, and we have a 3x. So in order to get them on the same side, I could either add 5x, which I'm going to do because it keeps the variable positive. You're going to get positive 8x right here. Or you could have subtracted 3x. So when I add 5x to both sides, I'm continuing this space right here. We get 8x plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 10. Okay? So let me clean up a little bit because it got a little messy there. There we go. And now, step 4, isolate the term that contains our variable. We subtract 6 from both sides. So we get 8x is less than or equal to negative 16. Step 5, get the variable by itself completely. Divide both sides by 8. Since we're dividing by a positive number here, we do not flip the inequality sign. So x is less than or equal to negative 2. And then we just got to graph our final answer. So our answer was x is less than or equal to negative 2. So we make a number line. Put a couple numbers on there so we show the viewer we know where it lies. And it's going to be a closed circle on negative 2 because it includes negative 2. And since x is less than or equal to negative 2, we shade to the left. Number smaller than negative 2 and also including negative 2. Okay? Let's look at another example. So I'll make that a little bigger so you can see it a little better. So we have 12 minus 3 times the quantity, 2x plus 1, less than 7x minus 3 times the quantity, 7 plus x. So always a good idea to draw a line through your inequality sign because that separates your two sides. So your first step, and we're not going to have the steps next to it here, your first step is to distribute. So we distribute the negative 3. Don't subtract the 12 minus 3 there because you have to do multiplication takes priority. So we have 12 minus, I just brought down the 12, minus 6x minus 3 is less than, bring down the 7x because we're not distributing that. We got to distribute the negative 3 as well. Make sure you look to the left to see its sign. Negative 21 minus 3x. Okay. Also be very careful with your signs when you're distributing. Okay. So now we combine like terms on each side. So I like to circle them, a 12 and a negative 3. When we add those together, we get positive 9. So I'm bringing down the negative 6x, and we get positive 9 is less than. We also have a 7x and a negative 3x on the right-hand side, which are like. We get 4x. And if you want to cross them off after you combine them, you can do that, minus 21. So now we got to get our variable terms on the same side. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 4x here. Now, usually I like to keep the variable positive, but what's nice about subtracting 4x here, and again, either way is actually fine. I'm getting the variable on the left, okay? But it doesn't matter. You could have added 6x, and then you kept the variable positive, which is actually nicer in a lot of ways because you don't have to worry about flipping your sign. But now we subtract 9. So we get negative 10x is less than or equal to negative 30. And then divide both sides by negative 10. But remember, because we divided by a negative number, we have to flip the sign. So x is greater than positive 3 is our final answer. No matter which way, no matter which variable term you move over here, you could, even if you added 6x, your final answer still would be x is greater than 3. So to make that graph, that's an easy one to graph. Put a couple numbers in your number line. It's going to be an open circle in this case. And shade to the right. Okay? Okay, so here's one more problem. So I'd like you to try this on your own. So pause the video, answer this in your notebook, and then once you're done, restart the video and we'll go over it. So the next 15 seconds will be blank. Okay, so hopefully you did this on your own. That's an important part of the learning process. Don't skip this anytime I ask you to do it on your own. So we got to distribute first. So we're going to bring down the 3x. So we get a positive 12x, right? It's a negative 6 we're actually distributing. Positive 12x and then a negative 48. So anytime you do a step, it's always a good idea to rewrite your problem. All right. So now we combine like terms. We only have like terms on the left-hand side, but they're both positive, so it's really easy. 15x. Rewrite the problem. Okay. So now we got to get the variable terms in the same side. Two different ways to do this, and I don't care which way you do it. It would actually be less steps to subtract 15x because we do want the variable term on one side and number on the other side, but I'm actually going to do it differently. I'm actually going to add x here, okay? And I'm going to show you why in a second. It's going to be an additional step, but here's why. We get 16x minus 48 is less than or equal to 0 because there's nothing at this point left on the right-hand side. But what's nice about the way I did it here is we got the variable positive. So we still got to isolate that term with the variable, so now we just add 48, okay? So we get 16x is greater than or equal to 48, and divide by 16, so x is greater than or equal to 3, positive 3, okay? Now again, if you subtracted 15x, you would have got negative 16x over here, and then you would divide by a negative 16, and when you flip your sign, you'd get the same exact final answer, okay? So just remember, we got to graph it. So we actually got 3 for the last one as far as the value. The answer was slightly different because it was just a greater than. But remember, we got x is greater than or equal to positive 3 if we go back. So we put a closed circle on 3 this time and shade to the right. All right? So, again, you should be pretty comfortable with this now because we spent a good amount of time on equations. You just have to remember that always distribute first, combine like terms second, and then anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, make sure you flip that sign. Okay? I think that's really it for the most part. And remember, these steps, even though they are steps you certainly want to follow, the steps we went over at the beginning, they hold true about 95, 97% of the time. There's always those exceptions where you might do something a little bit different first. But 97% of the time, you're going to distribute first, combine like terms second. Okay? So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know by attending a live class or sending me an email. And to finish off, I was just curious, and you could shoot me an email or comment or let me know. This is fairly local, so I wanted to know if you guys knew where that was. Okay? So I visited there actually in the fall. So just to end with a cool picture, let you know a little bit about my life. I like to walk with my family and hike and things like that. So tell me where that is. If you know where that is, that's pretty cool because it's a pretty cool thing that they did there. So all right, thank you very much. Have a fantastic day, everybody.